this is going to be the actual size on the Miro board, right? And as you can see here, we can zoom all the way in till we're looking at the individual student work, or we can zoom out and we can see all the work here. So this is why it's important to use this as a size guide, because we want to, if the work is intended to be a particular size, we want to keep all those sizes consistent. All right. These sizes also matter in case we want to, at a future date, download the information from Miro board. So we're trying to keep it to real world sizes as well. Okay, so this is what the sample grouping would look like, and this would be per semester. And then as you zoom in, you will see these are the 2 student samples. And remember, you will delete all of these reference points and add your own sample points there, and essentially delete what is not needed. So for example, if you only had 2 assessments, you can delete this row, and if I hover to the edge here, you can see if I click these little 3 dots, it will highlight the entire row, and I can just hit the trash can, and that's it. The entire row is deleted. If I did that by mistake, I can do Ctrl Z to undo, and it's back. If I have more samples that take up more space, as I said earlier, you can resize this and it will keep all of the adjacent student work intact, right? You can also insert a row by clicking this plus button here. And essentially, it's just like using Excel. It's just a little different. Okay, now additionally, when you move information around, as we saw earlier, it will highlight each cell so you know the information is registered for that cell. So when you move stuff around, it will keep everything in order. Now you can move the entire block, and it might take some getting used to moving the entire block. If I click in one cell, it will highlight a particular cell, as you see here. So obviously I don't want to move a cell. If I want to move the entire block here, I need to select everything. And the way you can do that is by clicking on the outer edges of the cell like that. Now once you do that, you can see that the entire cell is highlighted. But before you start to move it, you need to hover until you get that move symbol. Now there are a lot of different symbols you can get. For example, if I hover in the middle, I'm getting the symbol to move these, to resize the row or resize the column depending on where I'm hovering, right? In order to move the entire block, you need to wait till you get that symbol first, and then you click, hold, left click, hold, and drag. Let's do that again. I'm going to select the edge here, and there we go. Now, depending on how much information you have in this block, it might take a little while to move. However, I don't anticipate that you'll need to move the entire block, because most of the information you will need to add, if you have additional information, will be adding more columns below and not necessarily moving the block. Okay, so that's just a quick example of what the actual block looks like. Now let's talk a little bit about the information that is to be housed on the Miro board. The main idea or the main advantage of using Miro board is that it can receive multiple types of information and represent them visually. The key word there is visually. And if you think about it, you can have files stored, for example, in your Google Drive. For example, what we're seeing here, these are files that are stored in a Google Drive. Now these files are represented by icons, and in order to visually view the information that is represented by these icons, we have to actually, for example, double click this icon here, and then the information will come up on screen like a slide presentation, right? Now, what Miro board does is that it will visually represent the actual data and not necessarily represent an icon which represents the data. So the main advantage of placing the student work on Miro board is that when you view the Miro board directly, you're viewing the actual content visually without having to open that content into a separate application, right? And that's perhaps one of the most advantageous things. So what we're seeing here is that Miro board will represent the information you see here visually. Meaning, if you drag a JPEG image onto Miro board, it will show the actual JPEG image. Same for YouTube videos, Google Slides, PowerPoint, or Google Docs. It will show the actual document there on the Miro board instead of having to open it in a different application. So the advantage of this is that the Miro board, it gives you the ability to quickly cross compare and cross analyze between information. So for example, this is the presentation that I'm doing now, and I'm able to quickly browse around and view content directly without having to open a secondary information, right? So that is essentially the advantage of using Miro board. And the idea is that every student that submits their work will submit it in one of these formats. Now, obviously, there are other formats. For example, there are Revit files and AutoCAD files and all of these other proprietary file formats. But these are the file formats that I believe that we will be using primarily on the Miro board. If a student submits work that is in another file format that you don't see here, I'm suggesting that you convert it to one of these formats and then put it on the Miro board. So, in order to manipulate data to place them on Miro board, you're going to have to maybe use some tools depending on the type of information that you want to place. Now, for the most part, we will be placing a lot of PDF work on the Miro board. So hence you might want to do things like edit a PDF, compress it, or maybe you want to split a PDF in two. We're going to have to use additional applications to do that and then drag the PDF onto the Miro board. So what we're seeing here are the main options for manipulating data to go on the Miro board, right? Some of them we're familiar with. So for example, YouTube. Some of you might have student work that was submitted as a YouTube video. You can just copy the link directly on the Miro board and the video is viewable there. A lot of us have files, documents, presentation, videos that are stored in Google Drive. The good news is that you can just copy that link onto the Miro board and it will be visible directly from Google Drive, right? In most cases, you will not have to download the information to your computer, then go to Miro board. For some information, you can just copy the link directly from Google Drive, place it on Miro board, and it will automatically show the content from that link. Okay. Now, for some of us, especially the Design Studio modules that have large PDFs, maybe PDFs that have a lot of pages, you're going to have to manipulate these PDFs, compress them, split them, and so forth. So here are a couple options that you can use. Some of them are free, some of them are not free. For example, Photoshop